The days of command line are behind us. Learning how to automate is even more essential today, be it deploying infrastructure or performing repetitive tasks. Automation is the direction forward. And if you're going to learn automation, you need to start with Linux and Python. These are the foundational skills for automation. So if you don't want to be left behind, keep listening.
Do you want a career in cybersecurity? Are you unsure how to start? Curious what it means to be a cybersecurity professional? This is the Cyber Job Hacks Podcast with Dr. Jeff Colburn. He's a 30-year industry professional and the founder of Team Caveo, a company that specializes in helping people launch cyber careers. Join us on this podcast as we explore what it means to be a cybersecurity professional and how to get started. Welcome to the show.
Not sure if a cyber career is for you? Are you looking to get started? Are you looking to grow your career? Are you feeling stuck and don't know where to begin? My Get Good Fast coaching will help you quickly grow as a cyber professional. I can help you become a great engineer in months rather than years. It doesn't matter if you're new to the industry or mid-career. I coach you through that same process that has worked for me and my students. Go to coaching.cyberjobhacks.com to schedule your session today, or just follow the link in the show notes. Welcome to the Cyber Job Hacks Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Jeff Colburn. Well, most people working in the industry today know that the days of command line are behind us. Even those who are stubbornly holding on to CLI know that their days are numbered, right? So learning or refusing to learn automation, well, you'll just find yourself left behind, right? The industry is moving forward. Automation's here. You see this progression from dashboards to full automation. Nobody wants you out there using command line anymore. I know people swear by command line. They want to hold on to it, but it's just not efficient. And just the way networks are nowadays, you got to learn automation. It's the days of command line. Hey, I was one of those people. I knew the command line. I did everything through command line, but reality is that's in the past. Now everything's automation, and rightfully so. As you find when you start automating, you're wondering why you didn't start doing it earlier, right? So, that's where you are. No matter where you are in the industry, either starting out, mid-career, or senior, you got to start embracing automation. And, so for those who are starting out, right, I often, I say you're starting out, you're starting to learn the technology. And a lot of times when we start to learn the technology, we learn how to configure it using the command line. And there's value to this, right? That don't get me wrong. There's nothing wrong with knowing the command line. It's actually a great teaching tool, because if you actually want to see how a device implements a certain technology, you do it through command line. And I still do it with my students today. I still use command line because I want them to see and understand what they just learned about, the technology they just learned about, how it can be applied to a device, be a switch, router, firewall, right? When you automate it, you're not going to see that. So, learning command line, it's a great learning tool, but it's not a practical production tool, right? Now you need to start learning automation. So if you're new and you just start learning technologies, why not also just learn how to implement that technology with automation, right? So if you want to start off strong, right, why not start learning automation in conjunction with learning the technology, right? So why restrict your studying to that command line, right? So you're studying the technology, which is important, right? You want to understand how that technology works, and then you can start how do I implement that? So you learn the command line, But why stop there? Why not start learning? Well, how do I automate that? How would I use an automation tool? Or how would I use a script to do this so I don't have to go to each individual device, right? Something simple as creating a VLAN, right? You got 100 switches. You don't want to go out to 100 switches and create 100 VLANs individually. No, you could automate that, right? So why not start learning how that works, right? So a lot of times, as an instructor, I have to be careful, right? I have to not, I can't overload my students, right? I got to make sure, okay, I'm giving them enough to challenge them, but I don't want to burn them out, right? So, I'm teaching them new technology. I'm showing them how to build in command line, but is it too much to start say, hey, okay, now start learning these automation platforms, and this is how you automate it, right? So there's a balance, but I believe it's possible, right? But if you're going to do this, right, it's like anything, right? You start off with like learning routing and switching. You don't start off with like BGP, right? You learn with the basics. Well, it's the same with automation, right? And if you're new to the industry, or even if you're just starting to learn automation, you might be in the industry for a while, but you're just starting to learn automation, right? There's two things that you really need to learn because they're the foundational skills for automation, and that's Linux and Python, right? Linux, the Linux operating system, and then, the Python programming language, right? These are like pillars to automation. And if you're going to start out learning automation, these are the two you start with, right? So why is automation important, right? So, I'm saying, hey, we're moving beyond command line. We're starting to get into automation. So why automation? Why can't we just continue to build things through command line? Well, one thing, systems are becoming more complex, right? I got on-prem, I got cloud hosted. My systems are vast, they're complicated, and performing tasks manually, right? It's just time consuming, and it's prone to human error, right? As more complex a system becomes, the more likely somebody's going to make an error, right? So now you're looking at a lot of time and errors when implementing, right? So automation is more efficient, right? I can deploy infrastructure, configure devices, I can perform repetitive tasks all through automation. And once it's written, right, I don't have to keep rewriting that script, right? If I'm building something through command line, right, I have to enter that on each individual device. Now, some people say, well, I'll just copy and paste in, something in I'll create the config in a text file and I'll copy and paste it into the individual devices. Yeah, you know what happens with that is you forget to change the things that are unique to that device. And next thing you know, you have duplicate IP address issues and all kinds of things because you forgot to change out the variables, right? Automation doesn't do that, right? It knows, right? It's written, right? So it's not reusing the same variable, right? Whereas human, we forget to change it in the text file. When we copy or paste in, we just created a whole new batch of issues, right? So, and this is true with network and cybersecurity tasks, right? So I'm automating network tasks, but also same as, with security tasks, right? There's repetitive tasks in both that are benefited with automations. And you're seeing this, right? You're seeing this shift in organizations that they're going to dashboards, right? So, they may not be at full automation yet, right? But they're starting to use things like, Catalyst Center, Arista, Cloud Vision, Nexus Dashboard, Palo Alto's Panorama to manage and configure the firewalls and their rule sets, right? So they're seeing like it doesn't make sense to go to each individual firewall or each individual switch, make configuration changes. So they start with dashboards. But even that is time consuming and you still have errors, right? Because now operators clicking through different GUIs, you got to drill down, they got to enter information, and they can make mistakes, and it's time consuming. So the dashboards are just a stepping stone. We're not going to stay at dashboards. You're going to see full automation. It's coming. So prepare yourself for it. And a way to do that is learn the basics, get those foundational skills. And that's why so you start with Linux and Python. And so why Linux? Well, Linux powers everything, right? It's an operating system that most things run on, right? Cloud platforms, network devices, servers, most of these things are running Linux. Even your automation platforms like Ansible and Terraform, right? They're running on Linux, right? So if you're going to master a command line, if you're going to learn a command line, this is the one you want to learn. That's a Linux command line. Learning the Linux shell, how to navigate through it, right? Because that's how you're going to run scripts. That's how you're going to integrate your automation platforms. You want to be versed in Linux. So, my advice today, if you're going to become versed in a command line, well, be it the Linux shell, right? Because that's something you're going to be using a lot of in the coming days. All right. So how do you learn Linux, right? So we know it's important to learn Linux. Well, learning Linux, yeah, it's going to take some time, but it's not going to cost you a lot to learn Linux. Actually, you probably could learn it free or for very little money, right? There's several distributions of Linux that's free for you to use and download. So like myself, I use CentOS 9 Stream, right? That's the distribution of Linux that I use, right? And then I just download it from their site, right? And I have it running on my Intel NUC. So like I mentioned in the previous episode, I have an Intel NUC as my home lab. And that NUC runs CentOS as its operating system. It's not running Windows or anything like that. Its operating system is CentOS, right? But I don't practice my Linux on my what I would call my host machine, right? My NUC, right? I'm playing around with it, practicing it. I don't want to break it, right? So instead, I run what's called a kernel-based virtual machine, a KVM, right? So I'm running KVMs on my NUC, right? So now I have these virtual hosts, or virtual machines, I should say, on my host or running on my NUC. So one allows me to have more than one Linux host, and I don't risk messing up my host computer or messing up my NUC, right? If I mess something up on that virtual machine, I can just blow it away and create a new one, right? So that's the beauty of having these virtual machines, and it allows me to practice and try things without worrying about, well, I'm going to break my home lab. No, it's all on virtual, so it's great. And then how do you learn Linux, right? So you have this environment running Linux, either on a virtual machine or on some other host. But there's free resources online, right? If you're going to learn Linux, there's no lack of resources out there, right? There's videos, there's courses, there's even books that'll walk you through it, right? And if you want to become a real Linux expert, you can, you study for that Red Hat Certified System Administrator exam, right? That's gonna really get your Linux skills, at an expert level, or not expert level, but like a solid level, I should say. Better than the just, hey, I know a few Linux commands. It's actually going to give you a solid foundation to build your automation skills on. Even if you don't take the exam, the resources are good, and it's going to help you to focus your study. And the beauty part of a lot of these Linux resources is it's not just you're reading about it; they're walking you through. So it's like chapter 1, there's like, okay, build your Linux environment, and then they basically walk you through, how to configure or how to do certain tasks in Linux as you go through their material. So it's a very hands-on. So they're really good, and I definitely recommend that you find a good resource that's going to really give you that strong foundation of Linux to build upon. So that's Linux, but why Python, right? There's so many programming languages out there. Why is Python? Well, Python is a scripting language of choice for network automation, right? And there's a reason for that, right? The syntax is very simple, and it's easy to learn. And there's several libraries that already assist with automating common tasks, like NetMiko, right, is a popular library for automated network devices. So you don't even have to you can take things from the library and use them as part of your script. You don't have to create everything fresh. You just pull from these libraries, right? So, so a lot of the work's already been done for you in Python. So that's another reason why you want to use Python. And the other thing is, Ansible, right? It's the automation platform that's that's popular around network engineers. So there's a lot of things that are already written as Ansible playbooks, or you have Ansible collections for certain vendors like Arista, Cisco, Juniper, right? They already have playbooks developed for you that you can use, right? So Ansible is something that that network engineers are using. And Ansible is built upon Python, right? So again, knowing Python is going to help you implement Ansible. So the reason we want to use Python is because it's going to save you hours when performing repetitive tasks. And I'll give you a perfect example of how a Python script saved me hours, if not days, of work, right? I was performing a network assessment for a rather large company. I'm talking hundreds of devices, routers and switches. And normally traditional way to pull that information from devices, right? You use show commands, right? So I had to go in these, it was a Cisco environment, so it was all Cisco routers and switches. So I had to do all these show commands to pull this information to perform my network assessment. And traditionally, I would have to log into each device, execute my series of show commands, copy that output, and then paste it into a spreadsheet, right? This would have took me hours. It probably would have took me a few days, if not longer, right? It's just that's how many devices it was. Well, I use a Python script. Only thing I had to create was a host file with all the devices management IP addresses. And once I executed that Python script, it logged into each device. It grabbed the information. It populated a spreadsheet for each device. So each device had its own spreadsheet, and then the output for each show command was a separate tab on that spreadsheet, right? So this was incredible. It did something that would have took me, even after I pulled all this stuff, logging into devices, would have took me, hours building all these spreadsheets with the different tabs. Well, it did it for me in minutes, right? So what it took me hours or days, done in minutes, right? That's the power of automation. And that was a very simple Python script, right? It wasn't that complicated at all. But wow, it just saved me so much time. So that's why you learn Python. That's why you learn Linux. That's why you learn automation, because this is going to become the expectation. When somebody asks you to do something and say, hey, we need this information off 300 devices, you can't say, well, it's going to take me a week or two. No, that's not going to be acceptable, because the expectation is going to be that you're automating this, that nobody's looking for you to go and log into each and every one of those 300 devices. No, those days are gone. They're past. And so that's why the expectation is going to be you automate, and the time frame to get things completed are going to be shortened because people are expecting you to be implementing or using some form of automation. So how do you learn Python? Well, it's like Linux, right? Python's free. And if you have an Apple Mac, you already have Python. It's already running on your Mac. You just go into the terminal and Python's there. But if you're going to practice Python on your Mac, I suggest using virtual environments, right? And if you don't know what that is, most introductions to Python will explain virtual environments and how to set them up. It's usually one of the first things they talk about, because they're trying to warn you of the same thing I'm warning. If you're going to do something in Python, do it in a virtual environment. All right, so it doesn't break everything else if something goes wrong. And learning Python is about practicing, right? You're gonna create a Python environment. You're gonna practice in it. You'll just find a good introduction to Python, and they're gonna walk you through building basic scripts, how Python works, right? It's just that's what you want. Just find a very good resource. There's this book called Automate the Boring Stuff, and on their website, the book is there, right? It's free on their website. They'll chapter by chapter, and they're going to teach you Python. They're going to teach you just, how to basically start programming with Python. But that's just one of many out there. There's so many resources to learn Python, but you want to learn it, right? So just to kind of wrap up this episode, automation is here. It's not going away, right? It's only going to get more and more demanding, more and more expectations going to grow more and more that you using automation. So learning how to automate is an essential skill, right? So if you're new to automation, you start with the basics like anything else. Just, start learning Linux, start learning Python, and then you're going to build on that, right? Then you might start looking, hey, how do I use an automation platform like Ansible or Terraform, right? But, start, don't overload yourself. Just start with Linux, start with Python, and then grow from there, right? If you're starting in the industry, be it cybersecurity or networking, you're gonna have to learn. You have to learn automation. So Linux, Python, it's gonna serve you whether you're a cybersecurity professional or a networking professional. You're gonna see these. You're gonna see them more and more. You can't hide from it. They're coming. So I'm not saying don't learn command line. Learning command line is a great learning tool. It helps you to understand how technology is applied by a device. So it gives you that deeper understanding as you learn technology, right? I always say learn a technology, then learn how it's implemented. You got to have both. So command line is a great teaching tool, great learning tool, right? But same time, start learning how this technology is implemented using automation, right? Just don't stop at the command line. How is this automated? What are the tools used to automate this, right? And believe me, especially if you're starting out, what you're trying to automate, somebody's already done it. So you can go out there and find out how somebody else did it and learn from them, right? But knowing Linux and Python is going to be key, right? You're going to have to learn these skills. And I say, don't hold off, even if you're just starting in the industry, right? As you're learning technology, carve out some time to start learning Linux, right? Start with Linux. You don't even have to start learning Linux and Python at the same time, right? Start with Linux. And then as you start getting comfortable with Linux, knowing Linux, then start introducing Python. But carve out some of your study time for Linux and Python as you're learning and growing with technology. So, that's all I wanted to share with you today. Learning automation, like, hey, I've been in this industry for nearly 30 years. I put off learning automation. It's always been there, but as an architect, I've always been kind of the design person, the big picture guy. However, even in that, I'm starting to see the importance of talking to my clients about the power of automation and how they need to start implementing this into their processes. So, even myself, somebody who grew up on command line, I know the importance of automation. I'm learning automation. I'm not an automation expert yet, but I intend to get there. So, you can, I suggest you join me on this journey if you're going to be in this industry. So speaking of joining me, if you're ever interested in becoming a student of mine, I offer various ways to join me. Either, I have a virtual one-on-one, or you can join me through my upcoming digital course I should be released in a couple of months. But hey, if you're interested, want to learn more, hey, just schedule some time and, we can talk. We can discuss your career goals. I can teach how I can help you get there. I just go to coaching.cyberjobhacks.com. And, you can schedule some time with me and we can talk. We'd love to hear from you. Even if you don't become a student or interested in being a student, but you just kind of want to talk about your career, where you want to go with it, hey, just reach out. I'd love to hear from you. But hey, so that's coaching.cyberjobhacks.com, or hey, just go in the link in the show notes. So, I hope you found this helpful. Hope you found this useful. If you disagree or you have a different perspective, always love to hear from you. Reach out to me, put some comments in the show notes, jump on the Facebook group, and put some comments there. Love to hear your thoughts on this. So until next time, have a great week. Do you want to be part of an online community of like-minded people? Join us at cyberjobhacks.com, where you'll receive the latest industry news, cybersecurity career trends, invitation to free events, and exclusive offers.
So join our private Facebook group at cyberjobhacks.com.
Thank you for listening to the Cyber Job Hacks Podcast. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. If so, please share with a friend who may be interested in becoming a cyber professional. Also, please leave a review on Apple Podcast. Your feedback is greatly appreciated, as it will shape our future episodes. Meet us here every Monday as we discuss the cyber job market and how to launch your career. Until next time, have a great week.